So I've got to ask you, how did this man end up in a women's prison?
So prison policy in Victoria states that prisoners are to be housed based on their gender identity rather than their sex assigned or assumed at birth. The prison policy, the same policy, also says that prisoners, that when making these decisions, the safety and welfare of prisoners is meant to be paramount, and sexual crimes and violent crimes are meant to be taken into consideration, which clearly hasn't happened in this case. And so what we're left with is this policy which is unjust, is unsafe, and it's quite frankly demented, because these are vulnerable female inmates who have backgrounds of trauma and sexual abuse. They've been forced to be housed with this male sex offender. We know that women overseas in similar situations have been raped and sexually assaulted. I don't know, are we going to have to see that here before our governments take action? I just think it's a disgrace.
Because this is not the first time that this particular prison in Victoria has held trans inmates. Is that correct?
That's right. There was another case which was highlighted in 2022 where another male sex offender who had attempted to rape a woman on a Melbourne street was also housed in the Dame Phyllis Frost Women's Centre. The prisoners there and other organisations like ours petitioned the government pleading for his removal. Those pleas fell on deaf ears. And those women basically said that they felt unsafe and re-traumatised. And we know that these aren't the only two situations. These two situations have been highlighted by whistleblowers, which is why we know more details. But there are men being housed in women's prisons across the country in Australia. And what's worse is authorities are trying to cover it up. Just recently in New South Wales, there was a story about a double male murderer who wanted to transfer to a women's prison because he started to identify as female. The New South Wales government came out and said, oh no, we don't do that here. Prisoners are housed based on sex. We don't allow that to happen. When we know full well that the policy does say that prisoners are to be housed based on gender identity, a policy which, by the way, was scrapped from the internet, and we know that there are prisoners, or there at least have been prisoners, men, who have been housed in women's prisons because politicians have asked the questions and they've gotten the answer, which has said, yes, there are trans females in women's prisons in New South Wales.
Wow. So the answer to this surely is to define gender, sex, women in law. That is what needs to be happening. I mean, there was a Supreme Court case in the UK which defined what a woman is. Is that what we need in this country? 100%.
Our laws and our policies here are an absolute mess. We have laws at the state and federal level, all of which include protections for gender identity, the Sex Discrimination Act, which has raised the definitions of man and woman. We have sex self-ID laws across the country, which allow people to change their sex on their birth certificate. And then we have policies like this prison policy that allows men to be considered as women and plays in women's prisons. So yes, we need to define what a woman is, a biological female, like they've done in the UK.
Which is nuts that we're at that point, but that's where we are.
But I mean, look what happened in Giggle versus Tickle as well. I mean, it completely blurred the line as to what is a woman. And that is half the battle that we're 100%. Facing in this country.